Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to today's masterclass. Our masterclasses, as you know, since April, have always had the unique dimension of involving colleagues from the academic side and executives, leaders, masters from, as we call it, the real world. And it's an interesting and complementary discussion on topics which are of great interest and also very actual. Today we're going to be talking about digital proximity and the extent to which digital technology can enhance, can augment, can ameliorate the physical proximity or any other kind of proximity, such as cultural one, of us as human beings. This is a very special topic and very interesting because it's also going to be put into context in a specific industry. So, and for interesting topics, you need interesting people. So, our speakers today are two, again, unique individuals. The first is going to be starting with Professor Jannis Kallinikos, who is a Cisco chair in digital transformation here at Lewis. Jannis is a widely published scholar in the information system literature and comes from London School of Economics, has decided to join us last year. From the real world side, as I say, we have Enrico Vita, who is an engineer by background, has a long-standing career in industry, started off in home appliances and now is leading Amplifon, who is a global leader in the hearing care industry. And again, so we're going to be in Louis' perfect style. We're going to be hearing from an academic and from an industry leader about digital proximity. So thanks again for listening to us. Please ask questions either to using the WhatsApp number you'll get on the screen in a second, or use the private chat that you have on your platform. So without further ado, let me leave the floor to Professor Jannis Kallinikos. The floor is yours, Jannis. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for inviting me into this event. Start my talk. Digital technologies have, over the last 2 or 3 decades, become increasingly involved in the ordinary, daily whereabouts of people. This is expressed and shown, among other things, by the unprecedented diffusion of smart digital devices, smartphones, wearables, and their integration in people's lives, but also by the advance of forms of digital conviviality in which the personal and domestic encounter the public. The personal and domestic meets the public life. Something which happens very often with social media. This may seem pretty natural and simple, and as the undramatic outgrowth of the technological developments of our time, and still, I would say, they mark a distinctive turn in the history of digital technologies and devices. Let me explain. The significance of this turn, I believe, can perhaps can be better appreciated. Again, a cursory overview of the societal concerns that have prevailed since the post-war years, and which are mostly about things such as prosperity and economic development, employment, the digital transformation of businesses and organizations, surveillance, democracy, privacy, and the rule of law. In most public and scientific discourses, digital technologies have regularly been linked to what I will call here big things. The concerns of our societies have predominantly evolved around the broader consequences of the march of digital technologies and the ways they impinge upon economy, society, and its institutions. Even when the lives of individuals are put at the center of social debate, such as in the ongoing discourses on privacy and surveillance, these are discussed as instances of general societal principles that concern key functions and aspects of our society, rather than as matters of personal nature and significance. I hope you understand the difference. I shouldn't be understood as saying that there are no public discourses or scientific works on the impact of digital technologies on the lives of people and the making of specific ways of being human through the use of these technologies. This is obviously not the case. The imaginative work of the well-known American psychologist Sherry Turkle over more than 4 decades now is a case in point. All I'm trying to say is that the link between the technology and the person has over the years remained off the center stage of key social discourses concerning the impact of technology on our societies. Awareness of such a state of affairs allow us to better appreciate the current turn and recognize that the integration of digital devices in the lives of people is distinctive development bound up with new and positive prospects, but also some novel risks. I believe it's important to understand that the spread of digital artifacts throughout the social fabric, and they are used by the ordinary person, moves the personal and family lives of people center stage and let them become increasingly connected to what I call before the big things, economy and society, in other words. This is most clearly manifested in the growing interlacing of digital platforms with our lives. Imagine Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, TripAdvisor. These are common platforms we spend quite a bit of our time daily, but also the growing diffusion of what is often called the Internet of Things. Amazon Alexa, Google Home, but also, as we will speak a little bit later, wearables and other smart phones attachable mostly to the body. The widely diffused concerns, therefore, of privacy and surveillance, interpreted this way, are indicative of this awareness and certain of the risks that are assumed to carry for the foundations of the prevailing social order. In other words, liberal democracy. While the concerns related to privacy and surveillance are omnipresent, we hear less frequently, and that's an important point I would like to make, about the details of the technology person encounter and how this encounter opens a new space that is not necessarily marked by fears, anxieties, defensive thinking, and negative repercussions. Digital proximity and intimacy are perhaps about these less frightening outlooks. Technologies and technological artifacts may provide the basis for a more balanced account of the pros and cons of the developments that mark our time. We know, for instance, from medicine, that there are hugely beneficial prospects linked to the ongoing development of personalized medicine. These prospects are, of course, linked to the hard data, genomic data about individuals. But they are also related to a growing variety of soft data gathered from an interlinked ecosystem of digital patches, smartphones, and wearables that monitor the human body and the life habits of people. These are some important, therefore, developments I want to say, and a closer look at them suggests that digital technologies may be deployed to fashion and promote new types of personal relations and novel forms of proximity and intimacy. At the most conspicuous level, as we all know from this COVID-19, the use of digital devices and technologies bring us closer, allowing communication and the development of digitally mediated forms of conviviality. And in some other cases, like the ones linked to the Internet of Things, they allow people to instrument and control the contingencies of their domestic lives and daily lives more generally in ways that have not been possible before. While all this seems evident, the detailed mechanisms or precise ways by which these things happen easily slip out of notice and evade reflection. The interference of digital technologies with the daily whereabouts of people and the ways digital technologies may shape conviviality, proximity, and intimacy do not happen only through what such technology enable us to do, such as connecting, talking, streaming, viewing, to name just a few of our daily uses of digital artifacts. It doesn't happen through this. It happens most often through what at first may seem as a byproduct of their use. That is, the digital footprint of the use of these artifacts as this is recorded in various forms of data. This is an interesting and elusive development at the same time. While the primary function an artifact or device allow us to realize, the Apple Watch or the hearing support that we will hear in a little while in the case of Amplifon, the primary function is important. Equally though, or even more important, are the data that its use generates. Through such data, it becomes possible to evaluate how a device is being used by an individual through the data it provides over time and comparing it with the data of other individuals. Several other use metrics can be developed on the basis of which other insights can be derived. And if you place things in this light, the Hubble medium of data suddenly enables a thorough and deepened understanding of an individual's use of a device and the aspects which the device records, and through that, or by extension, we get a picture of the psychological presuppositions and preferences of individuals. In some cases, such as the Apple Watch or Fitbit wristband, the functions of time watching is not the most important function of these devices. In most essential respects, devices of this kind work as recording notepads of the functioning of the body and the whereabouts of its users. It's not by accident that these developments have given rise to a new movement about the self and a whole body of a vivid and, as always, divided academic literature, often subsumed under the label of quantified self. The way these operations are accomplished entail most of the time an interlinked ecology of devices. They do not happen, in other words, with only individual devices, which devices are furthermore connected to the internet and the world of big things. Many of these devices are often controlled by applications in smartphones that provide ample opportunities of shaping their use to fit one's life habits and objectives and share them with others. There is no doubt that this data can be accessed by institutional actors such as advertisers, insurance and banking firms, data analytics companies, credit companies, authorities, among others, and be used by design or inadvertently in ways that are scarcely favorable to the individuals that generate this data. But they can also, and that's the point I'm trying to make in this short talk of mine, but they can also be drawn upon to build up a digitally mediated proximity in which individuals and their life conditions can be known as they have not been possible before, and assisted accordingly by developing services that are individualized and in many cases personalized. It's an interesting, and I'm closing my talk saying it's an interesting and in some sense puzzling development that I would say has some philosophical repercussions, that human objectives such as digital proximity and intimacy can be pursued and achieved by using what at first sight may seem as the soulless, without soul, medium of data. And yet, in the fashion I've briefly pointed out in this talk, data furnish the cognitive resources, I repeat, the cognitive resources and the medium that allows life to be known in ways that have never been possible before. As it is sometimes being said, data is the new oil, the very substance that fuels the big and roaring digital engine. I prefer myself to think that the maps of the future institutional, cultural, and personal landscapes will be engraved by data. It's an important statement, this one. As Italo Calvino would have said, and I quote Invisible Cities, life is so sometimes that things, said this great Italian novelist, are better seen at a distance sometimes. Proximity, I close, can be achieved at what may at first seem the distant and secondary world of data and the personal and institutional relations that data allow to infer, construct, and act upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan. It's a very interesting and compelling speech in and around the concept of digital proximity. I appreciate it. Let me start from the end point. Appreciate the fact that you've used and referred to Italo Calvino, which is not only because is one of my favorite novelists, probably the favorite one. But I also like the fact that you've quoting Calvino, put things into perspective. You said probably things, if I seen from distance, they look much better. This is also something that I oftentimes use with my students. Say, I'm short-sighted because I use contact lenses. But when you're short-sighted, you have to somehow impose on yourself to look really. Trying to look forward, and it's a kind of such a constraint imposing you a kind of different perspective that you actually have depicted very well by using Calvino. But other than Calvino, I liked a lot your idea of the fact that digital transformation first is pervasive, second it has unknown impacts. You have highlighted the fact that you said. These digital encounters open up new space, so there's kind of open-ended space, open-ended path that we have in front of us if we really want to use and govern digital transformation. So, and last but not least, this data as cognitive resources and as a medium is also very powerful. So a lot of questions that I'm sure they're coming in, and I've got a lot of questions as well. So let me now leave the floor to Enrico. Please, Enrico, we are all longing to hearing from you about your perspective on digital proximity. The floor is yours, Enrico, please.
Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you today. So I will start with just a few words about Amplifon. Amplifon is the global leader in the hearing care services. We are not a manufacturer of hearing aids. Our products are the services which are all around the hearing aid, so the physical device. Services which are the crucial element to ensure the efficacy of the hearing solution, and also to ensure a distinctive and personalized customer experience to our clients. We provide these services to our customers thanks to the work of more than 16,000 people worldwide, of which about 9,000 are audiologists, a very peculiar and highly qualified professional figure, and through a network of more than 11,000 stores around the world. So today I will tell you something about our digital journey, which started quite recently, not more than 4 years ago, and which started based on a very simple consideration. And the simple consideration is that the new digital technologies offer huge opportunities, but on the other hand, also make every sector, every industry much more vulnerable to new competitors, to new entrants than ever before. Hence, innovating, leveraging on these new digital technologies has become an absolute priority, I would say even a survival matter for every company in every business, and therefore also for us. And in fact, this is also true in our sector, hearing care, which is an healthcare sector, to which is not immediate sometimes to associate the word innovation, because traditionally perceived as old and maybe even not very innovative, perhaps because associated with our target customer represented by people 65 plus. However, this is a very false commonplace. Likewise, it is a false commonplace, the one that associates the word innovation, digital innovation, only to the physical device. Much on the contrary, our innovation is aimed to the services that we provide to about 1 million customers every year. As said, 4 years ago, we started from a very, very simple observation, which was afterwards also confirmed by a survey that we conducted in partnership with the Istituto di Ricerca Ipsos to analyze the universe of the 55 plus here in Italy. And the very simple observation is that even seniors are digital. And in fact, the survey has brought to light a new generation of seniors, very far from the typical stereotypes related to the silver generation. Italian seniors are independent until 80. They are quite active, and more importantly, they are very curious towards new technologies. 7 out of 10 connect to the internet more than once a day and have a social account. So our vision was to leverage on the new digital technologies, and in particular on the new capabilities of the new generation of hearing aids, and specifically the Bluetooth connectivity and their advanced capabilities in terms of exchange of data, to innovate the services that we provide to our customers with two very simple but also very important goals in mind. The first one, through the data, we aim to get a much deeper and better knowledge about our customers. The second one, we aim to further personalize and enrich the customer journey with new digital touchpoints. Of course, both objectives aiming to strengthen our relationship with our clients and to create some sort of intimacy with our customers, which is particularly relevant when dealing with health matters. And in fact, until yesterday, the opportunity to get in touch with our customers was mainly related and limited, I would say, to the store, which is still a very important place, a place of relationship and listening, still for us indispensable, but not sufficient anymore to know and serve at best our clients, also because not always equipped for this purpose. So today, thanks to the new Amplifon product line and the dedicated app that we developed, and which represent at the end of the day the portal to access our digital ecosystem, we can establish a seamless relationship in the store and out of the store, relationship which is key to create a personalized and truly distinctive experience enriched with new digital services. And in fact, our Amplifon app offers several innovative functionalities, like the one that we called Companion, that use artificial intelligence to suggest and provide autonomous and personalized assistance to our clients on how to get the most out of the daily use of the hearing aid. Or like the function called remote care, which allow our audiologists to provide the support to customers also remotely. And finally, for example, thanks to what we call the Amplifon Ecosystem Control Center, we can now monitor the data and the way of use of our hearing aids in real time. And then through real-time analytics, we enable our audiologists in the store to have access to the usage data in real time in order to be alerted when a behavior is not in line with the expectations, and in order to be proactive to serve better our customers and, of course, increase the satisfaction. All this because at the end of the day, when approaching our products and our services, customers expect to enjoy a very highly professional, unique, and personalized experience. As I said at the beginning, we started with this journey just 4 years ago from scratch. We basically had no internal knowledge and capabilities, and therefore, to act fast, we thought that it was not possible to develop all the required competencies exclusively internally. So we embarked on a journey that, while was building the required competencies internally, and in fact, in the last few years, we hired more than 50 young people, highly skilled in software development, analytics, data science, etc. On the other hand, we have also partnered with external providers. The last step of this journey also has recently culminated with the acquisition of a startup, chosen amongst the many that we considered and screened and we considered interesting for our business. AutoHub, this is the name of the startup, now develops remote care solutions for our app, but also audiometers for iPad, kiosk for preliminary audio tests, etc., etc. And this startup will become the competence center for our software developments. So, in conclusions, to conclude, from 2015 to today, we have more than tripled our investments in digital technologies, from circa 30 million per year to circa 100 million per year in last year. And this is because, of course, we think that the possibilities are infinite. We believe also that winners in our industry, but in every industry, at the end of the day, will be those that will make a better use of the data, of the software, and of the integrated retail. And this is exactly our goal. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Enrico. Really interesting perspective on your vision about the future of the industry you're working on, and the way you are sort of framing and interpreting the, say, operational lessons that you need to implement to continue to be a leader in your industry. I appreciate that. I've jotted down a few words, a few concepts that you have very well illustrated. The idea that digital, you started with this very strong statement: digital is a must, and then you ended up about the amount of investment that you're doing. You tripled your investment in software development. You hired say new professionals, so to offer new blood to the company, to build what I think is a digital ecosystem which cuts across suppliers down to the customers, because digital technology, as you said, they offer an important can actually augment the customer experience. And particularly, you use more than once, you mentioned more than once, they offer extended functionalities. So really, again, this echoes what Jannis was saying about the pervasive dimension of digital technologies. That is, again, as Enrico mentioned, is a must, and it must be very well managed and very well governed, because, as both of you said, data at the end of the day will make difference, but not data by themselves, but the way you use data and the way you can actually turn the data on, of course, on your side. We've started having quite a few questions, so I'll start questions. This interesting question from Gabriele, who says, we now find ourselves in a so-called post-pandemic phase. Well, I've got my own opinion on that, but still. In the speaker's opinion, over the last few months, and even today, did going totally online serve to compress the customer journey or extend it? So what do you think? Was the pandemic, extended or compressed the customer journey? And will it stay like either compressed or extended? Enrico, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so I think that it's a bit early to state whether or not the customers' behaviors have changed because of the pandemic. In our case, I would say that there was not a huge difference pre-pandemic and afterwards, but some kind of compression in terms in the customer journey is something that we have deliberately trying to do, and this in order, of course, to make the customer journey easier for our customers. But in general terms, I would say that it's a bit early to say if behaviors from customers is gonna change because of that.
Okay, thank you, Enrico. Jannis, what's your reaction to this question?
I think that my instinctive answer to this it will be it depends on. By which I mean that there may be activities in which the journey it becomes more straightforward, and other activities in which the involvement of digital technologies introduce by necessity new steps, new procedures, new forms of filling in data, and all these kinds of things. But I will agree with Dr. Vita as well that it's a bit too early to say definitive things about this. We don't know, really.
Very good, thank you. Yes, I do have my own opinions about the end of the pandemic phase. I think we are still somehow in the middle of it. As we say, we are facing a crisis which is very much symmetric. So because we are somehow dealing with or trying to fight against the same enemy, but the implications are very much asymmetric. So because different countries, different sectors have to react, must react differently to the pandemic. Now we have a questions from Simone, which is directed to Enrico. And Simone asks, in your opinion, did this health crisis serve to change people's approach to their health in general, or in hearing care in particular, did you find any changes in terms of awareness?
I would repeat myself. Maybe it's too early, but this is what we expect. We expect that because of the pandemic, actually the people behaviors towards health will become more relevant. I think that during this period, people realize that health is something that you cannot take for granted, actually, and therefore you need to pay even more attention than before. In our specific case, also, there is an element which is related to our customers, of course, which, as I said, are represented by people 65 plus, which were the most, let's say, the kind of generation mostly affected by the different restrictions in terms of mobility and so on and so forth. But in general terms, yes, I think we think that health matters will become more relevant also for people in general.
Okay, thank you very much, Enrico. Now I have a question for Jannis. The question is from Francesco, and who asks, how do you think that digitalization will redesign the workplace? So we go from it's a more general question.
Yeah, it's a big question, Francesco. Digital technologies have been about now for 70 years. Basically, they started just after the Second World War. They started really by what we now call computerization of the factory and the office. So there is a long journey, therefore, and much of the workplace has been significantly restructured. Of course, all this depends on what kind of industries, on what kind of organizations. But overall, we have a significant and dramatic change, which most often is expressed with the significance which symbolic and intellectual work, which is another term for work with data, has been acquired in the history of production and in the history of the workplace. So to be short, the workplace has increasingly been transported and remade in ways in which physical and what is often called in academia embedded work has been transformed into a more intellectual encounter, more cognitive encounter. But there are other changes as well. It's impossible for me to cover this here, and this very much depend on the kind of industry, whether it is service, whether it is governments, whether it's industrial organizations.
Thanks, Jan. It's very illuminating in this respect. Now, I do have a question from Ludovica, which is very well articulated and long, in fact, but I think I can try to synthesize it and ask to both of you the extent to which this health crisis has somehow impacted on the loyalty, on trust in general, but the loyalty, customer loyalty in more specific terms. I see Enrico somehow smiling, so I wonder whether you can start addressing the question, Enrico, please.
No, I was just thinking that this kind of crisis, in my opinion, the kind of reputation of the brands will become even more important than before. I mean, maybe people is becoming even more conscious on their decisions, according also to the kind of reassurance that the brands are giving them. And this is, in my opinion, something that also led us, for example, to stay open even during all the pandemic. I mean, this is a very practical practical example. I mean, during the pandemic, we decided to keep our store network open. Not, of course, the full network, but a certain number of stores worldwide, despite of the fact that from an economical point of view, that was clearly a nonsense. But we did it on purpose because we thought that, in particular, in these times, was very important actually to stay close to our customers and to demonstrate our commitment to them. So I think that the credibility for brands in this environment has become an even more important aspect of the business.
Very good, thank you. Jannis, what's your take on it?
My take to this question would be the following. This is what we academics call empirical question, which means it can't be answered without access to cross-sectoral data that concern a number of organizations, in which, when you have them, you can tell, yes, you had 20% of people, for example, that stuck to this, and another 80 that started trying out others. So we don't have this data so far, and we don't know for sure how such difficult moments as the pandemic impedes upon the loyalty towards brands. But as with Enrico, I would agree on the following. Under conditions of turmoil, ambiguity, and risk, people tend to behave, this we know from research, conservatively. They do not change. They stick to what they know and to what they believe get good value from. So that's my answer to it.
That's very, very interesting, because basically it does point to what Enrico was mentioning regarding the ever-increasing importance of reputation. That is, I was mentioning exactly the same point to my colleagues and about an hour ago in our faculty meeting, because one of the processes that this pandemic has accelerated, is especially in our industry, but in general, is polarization. You have the prestigious brands that becomes more prestigious, so which actually speaks to what Jannis was saying. People, they tend to stick to what they believe, and if you have an important brand which is pretty much positioned in your mind, it's very difficult that you're going to be changing your beliefs because of the pandemic. And then, because of the polarization which has been again pushed up by the pandemic, there are organizations who are not very well reputed, and therefore they will end up with a much larger number of constraints. So, and this is something which and it's pretty much cross-cutting to your point, Jannis, about the importance of cross-sectional, intersectoral data in and around this issue. We have another questions coming up. A lot of questions are flocking in. This is from Andrea, and Andrea asks, is a question for Enrico. It says, developing such a deep know-how in customer data needs, initially related to Amplifon, do you plan using them to offer product services other than hearing aid? Well, this is a strategic question, Enrico.
This is a very good question, and is a question that we keep asking ourselves, actually. So far, we answered to this question saying that we still have so many opportunities in our core business that actually we wanted to remain focused on hearing aids. But I cannot neglect that maybe in the future we will also use the data, the knowledge of, in particular, this kind of population, which is called the silver generation, actually also to offer different and alternative services. Very good question. We keep thinking about that. So far, we wanted to stay very focused.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much, Enrico. Jannis, if you were to advise Enrico on this, what would you do?
I give a few examples, Andrea, from my own research on TripAdvisor. So TripAdvisor started as a little company of, reviews and ratings and hotel and place experiencing, which users were, inputting into the social media kind of platform that TripAdvisor had, and has reached where it is today, which is one of the most powerful companies in the hospitality sectors, doing everything, basically. And all of this is being done by combinations of various types of data. One of the most important services, for instance, in the history of the company is something which is called the popularity index, that became really for the company the moving star, and which attracted a lot of what is the popularity index, is a way of combining, and that's very interesting, different types of data to say to people that this is the most popular place for this and this and these reasons, which means it simplified an enormous complex search process and provided assurance to traveling people that this is the best possible choice. And all of this is being done basically by combining 4 different types of data, including reviews, including even prices, hotel prices, and many others. So I want to be short about this. Data will proliferate, and they will always be possible to combine one type of data source with another to develop interventions and particular services that will be commercially viable and will support the expansion and development of companies. This is the history of data as we've been following it since the emergence of the internet and all the big companies that started with it in 1992, 1993, 1994, Amazon, up to Google 1998. So data will expand and will diversify and will support a whole lot of services. Which ones is a question for each company to decide at which moment to launch and use it.
Very good. Thank you. So what Jannis, what we're basically suggesting, that data can become really, just going back to your previous concept, is the cognitive resources that may help even to pursue option of strategic diversification in a way.
Absolutely. One of the things that data do, Andrea, is whereas in the old industry, the knowledge of each industry created very, very rigid confines within the industry. It couldn't cross easily out of this because you needed a whole lot of time and education and learning to develop that knowledge. Data do not have these qualities, for good or bad, and they can be combined and can be cross boundaries in such a way which is unimaginable. Look what Google has been doing, which is another example than TripAdvisor, which is being diversifying in more and more uses of data. They basically starting with one form of data, click-through rates. So people were clicking through in the result pages that they offered to users, and they got money from the click-through rates. That was the beginning of Google. And now Google is a hugely diversified company. It does really, it expands to many, many activities. So yes, Andrea, it redefines the boundaries of the industry, the data.
Thanks, Jannis. Let me just turn the points by Jannis for a question for Enrico. Do you see, say, potential attackers to your industry, which may emerge thanks to the digital transformation of other companies? They may decide to get into your industry. coming from totally different sectors. Do you see that problem coming along?
Well, of course, we are always very, very conscious that we cannot relax ourselves, of course, that we should always keep looking for potential new entrants and new competitors. Our vision in general is that the customer journey, which was in the past based only on the store experience, will evolve, and will evolve towards a more omni-channel customer journey, which will be, as I said also during the introduction, which will be enriched from digital touch points, etc., etc. But we also believe that in our sector, the store will still always quite relevant for our customers. So our vision is that there will be a much more, if you want, complex and customer journey, but anyway, the centrality of the store will remain. That's why also we keep investing, of course, in bringing innovation also inside the store in order to improve the customer experience in the store.
Very good, thank you. We do have a last question, then we'll bring this, we'll wind up this masterclass. Nilu asks, what is the role of empathy in reinventing customer journey? Does empathy matter? Enrico, what do you think?
I think absolutely yes. In particular, and I keep making some example about our company. I mean, in our company, of course, our customers need really to be accompanied during the journey in order to be convinced to adopt an hearing solution, which is something that at the end of the day people doesn't want to have, because I keep saying that our biggest issue, our biggest competitor, if you want, is the denial. I can hear well, etc., and therefore I do not need an hearing solution at the end of the day. So the ability really to get in closer relationship, and therefore the role of the empathy in our sector is something very important for sure.
Thank you. Jannis, you have a point on empathy and the extent to which it's important?
It surely does, I would say, Andrea. It's an important human element that always plays an important role. I don't know how it may be expressed in this case.
Well, that's another interesting empirical question.
Also, I would say, yeah. But we do know from life that empathy is a force in a human life. So it should matter.
Very good. So thank you very much to both of you. It has been a very interesting and paced masterclass. We have touched upon a number of interesting concepts. Let me underline 3 which I've found, and I think they're good takeaways for our audience. The first is the importance of understanding innovation, digital innovation within an ecosystem, which is particularly relevant. So there is also an issue of coordination across different actors within and across countries in a way. The second, let me highlight again the fact that there is no one-to-one relationship between technology and innovation. You can innovate, and you should innovate also the service side of the technology, which is relevant, even more relevant, I think, in the light of what you mentioned, both of you mentioned, especially in what we live now in the digital era. The third point that leads me to conclude the masterclass is the one thing you have mentioned more than once, even in your when you address the questions, the open-ended dimension of digital technology. So it means that there are still a lot of opportunities that can be somehow grasped by organizations, either to consolidate their positioning in one industry and or to enter into other sectors. However, this open-endedness, open-ended dimension does call for surely skills, competencies to manage and govern it. There is a very interesting word that has been put forward by Luciano Floridi, who is a professor of philosophy at Oxford University, who says that basically since the emergence of the computer and the internet in general, we have entered a new era, which he defines hyperhistory. He calls it hyperhistory because nowadays, each of us live both in real terms. We're still very much into physical, we're still very much into the analogic world, as well as in the digital world. And what Luciano Floridi warns is that we are the last generation that has had the chance, in fact, we've been very lucky to live in both worlds. But new generation will have not ever seen, an analog telephone or whatever. So the point is from Luciano is that we should pay a lot of attention, us as a university, companies, but institutions in general, to really put effort in governing how digitalization will evolve, because otherwise, we may lose thread, we may lose the opportunity, to get into it and exploit it. So again, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting and illuminating masterclass. Thanks to Jannis Kallinikos, our professor of digital transformation. Enrico Vita is industry leader and CEO of Amplifon, a global leader in the hearing care industry. Thanks to the audience, thanks to our students and former students who have asked questions. We'll meet again Thursday, for another masterclass. It's going to be on leadership, and we're going to be hosting Alessandro Profumo, who is the CEO of Leonardo Company, and Giampiero Pietriglieri, who is a professor of leadership from INSEAD Business School. Thanks again, and stay with us. We'll come back on Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.